Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the brain and how you can make it super healthy and make it super speed foods and things that we can do to improve our brain. Now, it is interesting, talking about the brain. If we really take a look at the size of the brain and how much it weighs, and we compare that to the rest of the body, it really makes up like 2% of the whole body weight. Yet it requires 20% of the oxygen of the body, of the metabolism of the body, is given to the brain. That's really interesting. And this is why the first thing I'm going to tell you is really important out of all the things that you can do. And the first thing that you can do to increase the size of the brain and prevent atrophy is, I know a lot of people will not do it and will be shocked, but it's really just a regular, consistent exercise. And the type of exercise that would be best is aerobic exercise. And what I mean is getting a lot of oxygen from the aerobic exercise. Now, this is not to say that other types of exercise is not also really good. But if you can also include walks, maybe hiking, for example, some sort of exercise where you can get a lot of oxygen, that would be even better than other types of exercise. But I personally like to mix it up. I do high intensity on certain days, such as like long walks, hiking, biking. And on other days, I would just do like running or high intensities, like going to the gym. So that is number one that you can do to increase the size of your brain. Now, the opposite would be inactivity, right? Staying home, couch potato, just chilling all the time and not exercising, staying on the couch all day. That would not be good for your brain, actually. It would actually damage your brain cells. Now, the second most important thing for your brain would be fasting. Yep, fasting. It's always the things that we hate to do, right? If you really look at the reality of life, it's always things that you really don't like to do. It's actually those are the things that actually would benefit you as a human being. A periodic, prolonged fasting is very extremely potent stimulator of certain of the brain, of certain it really help grow your brain and repair the brain function. You need to be doing probably, for example, 2 meals a day with maybe a fasting period at least 18 hours. Okay, so that would be a really good way to increase your brain functionality. But if you can do longer, like fasting, like for example 1 meal a day and fast for 23 hours, that would be even better. This would all depend on your lifestyle and also how much repair that you need to do to your brain. Because maybe you have some other issues in your brain. But the point is that when you eat too frequently and too much and have frequent snacks is just an opposite of actually improving your brain. It's just killer and creating problem for your, like, the brain. The brain suffers the most when you snacking and eating too much. So this idea that you have to constantly fuel the body of the brain is really false information that is scouring around. When you don't eat so frequently and so much, and you add prolonged fast, like, maybe like 48 hours, right? That is actually the number 2 that can improve your brain and increase your brain functionality. Okay? Now, the next thing that is going to increase your brain, everybody would be shocked, is basically cold therapy. Like, a cold shower. It is very, very potent stimulator of neurogenesis, which is the regrowing of your nerve cells. So that would be an example, an ice bath. That could be just taking a cold shower, some of you, So, you're not going to do this, but some of you will do it, but definitely it will, like, stimulate the regeneration of the brain. Okay. Now, combining all 3, you can look way back when human beings, like when humans were like not living in the cities with artificial lights and processed food and everything given with couches and cars. Like, if you look back then, human beings used to hunt in the cold environment, right? And basically the hunting and running, right? That is what really human being is built to be, It is our DNA that, we are not made to sit still and, like staying in the warm and chill on the couch. We're not just built into that. So a human body is built to constantly moving, constantly running, constantly, like, struggling. And the struggle is actually what builds your body and your brain, And that what sharpens your brain. So, like, as I said, like, these are the things that, if you really just pick 3 things, those are it. Like exercising, cold shower, and of course, like just making sure that, you're eating healthy for your brains, Okay. So now being being like in a comfortable environment, like having a refrigerator and just sitting back and being inactive, right? Those are the things can do, like, very damaging to your brain. Okay, so you have to watch for those, Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is omega-3. Omega-3 is extremely potent stimulator of growing your brain. That would be like a liver oil, like, cod liver oil. Why? Because a good portion of the brain is composed of something called DHA, which is a type of omega fatty acid that is actually the food for the brain. Okay? So that would help greatly, and it is very easy to do, to just have consumed, like, on a regular basis, cat oil. But you just got to make sure it is, like, organic and raw, like, not artificials. On the flip side, that's really bad for the brain is oxidized oil. Like, in the, like, oils that are heated, like vegetable oils. To create oils, you have to heat them up with solvents like hexane. And then on top of that, you use those oils to heat, like, in the heat, I mean, to actually fry like something or cook something. That actually worse, make it worse. So deep fry something is very, very bad for your brain, really bad. It's actually like you are killing your brain cells. Now, of course, like, we recently, substitutes for the saturated fats, instead of using, like, vegetable oils, like, like coconut oil, lard, butter are actually very good. So for those people, like, who are substituting like coconut and butter, it is actually better than using those oxane oil, like, heated oil, like vegetables. Now, of course, that combine as long as you keep your carbs low. And that takes us to another point, which is low carb diet. Okay? Because sugar and refined carbs and just eating a high carb diet creates a lot of oxidation to the brain. So sugar, refined carbs, and high carbs can really actually do, like, create like oxidation in your brain. Okay, which is like really neurodegeneration, that is a glucose hypometabolism, where a glucose is not able to metabolize the neurons. Okay, so that's the condition that occurs within the nerve cells, which means the destruction of the nerve cells occurs because it is not getting glucose fuel. So does that mean you need to eat more glucose? No, not really. It just means that you already ate too much glucose and you created insulin resistant, and now you basically create this resistance for glucose, and as well as that's what and as well as, like, destroying your, like, the cells, the neurons. It basically, like, starving off the nerve energy. Okay, so we can lower the amount of glucose that you eat, and we can feed your neurons a much better fuel, which is ketones. So ketones are the fuel that can bypass this damage of glucose and go right and feed the neurons directly. Okay? And we do that, well, we just lower our carbs. So that's it. Very simple. Just lowering your carbs can feed the neurons. We can also take ketones, a supplement. We can fast and generate ketones, do fasting, intermittent fasting. We can also consume, like, MCT oil, right? So because you are going to generate more ketones, right, that is going to actually, like, improve your brain. So now, as I mentioned, like, cold therapy, like shower, like cold shower. You can also do the heat therapy as well, like sauna, like, or hot shower. That can also be beneficial, but not as, like, really cold therapy. Okay. Another thing that is really, really beneficial for the brain is vitamin B1, thiamine. Okay, and that the opposite of it is a thiamine deficiency, which is a very common, and it is worse for the brain. It is really bad. When someone does not have enough B1, right, you start developing this condition called Wernicke. Okay, now it is a syndrome, like a syndrome sign, a condition where you are very deficient in B1 and the neurons. Okay, so like you have all sort of problems in the brain, and this usually occurs because you are eating a lot of refined carbohydrates, too much sugar. So when you don't have enough, you're actually inflaming your brain, and B1 is connected to so many positive things for our bodies, but especially for our brain, and also to get rid of stress. Okay. So the next one thing that you can do to improve your brain is probiotic, which is interesting because there is a connection between your gut and your brain, right? I mean, microbes in your gut makes all the sorts of the serotonin and other neurotransmitters and other factors. So if there's a problem in your gut, right, then that there's going to be a problem for you in your brain directly. So an example, taking antibiotic is really a big problem for your brain. It can affect your mood and even potentially certain dementia, which is interesting. If you just support your gut and you take care of your gut, you can actually help the regeneration of your brain cells. So that how do we do that? So how do we like support our gut to have probiotic? Is through like eating, consuming foods that have friendly micro probiotics, such as sauerkraut, fermented food, certain vegetables that are grown on the soil, organic soil, right? That have microbes and also have fiber in that vegetable can actually feed the microbes. If you have many different types of vegetables or different types of lettuce leaves, that would be better because it's going to create different microbiome. But also there's another antibiotic that was actually that's actually used as a GMO. It's known as glyphosate. It's a GMO that is used to alter or change, microbiome. So this could be a reason for you to just eat organic and stay away from GMO. The next thing that you can improve for your brain is going to get a vitamin D, right? To get an energy called infrared from the sun. Okay, so 50% of the sun's rays is infrared, and it can penetrate into your skull and create energy, a good energy that can increase your melatonin, which can act as antioxidant to support your brain. But that's also, one thing that you can do. Or also you can just take supplement, vitamin D, right? It can help your brain, versus just staying indoors with artificial lights. That would actually do the opposite. Lastly, a plant-based phytonutrients that is really good for your brain, such as turmeric, B phytonutrients, like a green tea. There's so many different, other nutrients that are plant-based. These can help you, your brain and just actually fuel it and make your brain 5x. Okay. Another thing is choline. Okay, choline is basically a kind of raw material that is really common neurotransmitter in your brain. Okay, so that would be eating foods that are high in choline, such as egg yolks, organ meats, liver, fish. So all these foods are really, really good for your brain, will create the neurotransmitters to improve your brain. Then we also have grass-fed animal products, for example, grass-fed meat. This grass-fed could be really good, and they are anti-inflammatory because of the omega-6. To these ratios you want 1. So that's just another point that you want to be aware when you're consuming animal products. You have to be aware of the difference. So lastly, sleep. A quality sleep, not quantity, not how many hours you sleep, but quality sleep really is really, really good. And it is going to regenerate nerve cells, right? Like too much caffeine, too much energy drinks actually can do the opposite to your brain. Okay, but if you have small amount of caffeine, it is okay. But too much, excessive amount of caffeine, then it will actually do the opposite. It will overtake and create problems, because if you really think about it, coffee is a stimulant for your cognitive function. So overstimulation can create issues. So you just want to balance that. Okay, another nutrient the brain needs that can multiply your brain and make it improve is zinc. Zinc is involved in different enzymes. If you are deficient in zinc, it can create an atrophy of hippocampus, an effect of your cognitive function as well as your mood. Okay, so it is really important that you take zinc. Now, zinc, you can get it from fish, or you can also take a supplement, but make sure that it is organic and also raw food organic. Okay, so those are the things that you get, nutrients or things that you can do to make your brain actually excellent.